Welcome everyone to this week's NIM Community Call. Now this is a special episode for a special week because on Saturday, I believe on the 6th of June, the 6th of June will mark the 13th anniversary of the first Snowden leaked documents coming out to the public. And this is something that shook up the world just as much as it shook up NIM in various different ways. So to discuss this, I have someone special with me who has a pretty close view on this whole process, or maybe a different perspective from others on this whole process, and who's also a returning guest on the NIM Community Calls and the chief scientist and founder of NIM Technologies. How's it going, Claudia?
Pleased to be here.
It's excellent to have you on. So ladies and gentlemen, this will be a bit of a special episode. We are going to be talking about the Snowden revelations and the impact they had. So as usual, there will be a Q&A at the end of the call. So feel free to leave your questions in chat, or if you don't want to log in with your YouTube account and compromise your privacy, you can also leave your questions on the NIM Matrix server in the general topic. We're also keeping an eye there. So for this call, we thought we're not going to rehash what the Snowden leaks contained, because there are a lot of people who did that in very high quality. So you can look around on the internet. Maybe we can also share some resources with you if you're interested in that. We're not rehashing that today. Instead, I wanted to bring Claudia's perspective on this whole process and the changes that it triggered, basically, and also what it did or how it pushed the founders towards the founding of NIM. So this will be mostly a personal sort of, and also like an academic sort of an outlook on how this all went down. Now, why am I asking you that, Claudia? So take us back to the early 2010s, before the Snowden revelations, which happened in 2013. What were you doing during that time?
So I just went to my calendar to check out. We were having some XKeyscore, at university. I was going to different conferences. At the time, I had moved on a little bit from network privacy. I did a lot of network privacy for my PhD and early postdoc years. And in the early 2010s, I was kind of diversifying into different problems. So I did works on social network privacy, location privacy, vehicular network privacy, privacy by design and methodologies and so on. And part of the reason was that, I did a lot of work on mixed nets. There was a lot of interest on mixed nets in the early 2000s. But then, especially when Tor came along and was kind of a practical system that was quite usable compared to what mixed nets could offer, like mixed nets like Mixed Minion that was deployed at the time. So a lot of the research on anonymous communications went towards connection-based systems such as Tor. And yeah, we kind of left a bit aside this idea of trying to have systems that would be resistant to global passive adversaries, right? In favor of weaker threat models that were nevertheless allowing you to have systems with lower latency and more usability. But these revelations, I think, made clear that this global passive adversary, or even global active adversary almost, was not just like a theoretical construct or a paranoid delusion, but was very existing in the world.
Let me stop you there. So we're using GPA, and I guess a lot of our community already knows what that is because they've been listening to these calls and they follow NIM for a reason. What is a GPA? What is a global passive adversary?
Yeah, so the global passive adversary is the idea when you're designing a system, and especially a mixed network. You say, okay, these mixed nodes, we assume that at least a subset of them are honest and not adversary controlled, and that means that whatever happens inside the mixed node is not visible to the adversary. However, the adversary controls the network because the adversary has full visibility and the network is not protected. Like what's on the wire, anybody who can listen to the wire is able to see the packets exchanged in the wire, right? So the idea is that when you are doing the threat analysis for an anonymity system, you say, okay, if I consider the global passive adversary, this is an adversary that is able to see all the links between all the entities in the network, is not able to see what happens inside the components it does not control, but is able to see all the inter-component communications and do analytics on that and try to infer private information that the system is trying to conceal. Of course, in practice, even the NSA, I am not sure we can say that is 100% the full intranet. There might be some links on the internet that are not, having a comprehensive view is not so easy. But what these revelations showed was that they were really capturing massive amounts of metadata. And the revelations also showed the focus on metadata, actually. The first program that was revealed, this was kind of the big bombshell. I think it was in The Guardian, it came out, this Verizon, and it was basically the call metadata. So this is exactly what the kind of metadata you're trying to conceal. And the first revelation was they are collecting it in bulk. So that means that whenever there is a phone call, like a telephony phone call, which was maybe more common.
More common than these days. Yeah, I never call anyone anymore.
But whenever there was a phone call, this system would record like what's the number calling, to which number they are calling, at what time they are calling, and what's the duration of the call, right? So this is like the pure metadata. And this was being collected like in bulk. This was the first revelation. And then that was only the first shoe to drop. There were many others to come, and a lot of them related to metadata. One of them, Tempora, I believe it was the name, showed that they were wiretapping the backbone undersea cables that carry like all this transatlantic traffic. So these are like the big pipes of the internet, the big core infrastructure of the internet. And they were basically wiretapping the metadata on those big infrastructures, buffering it for days and kind of filtering and doing, recording and keeping some of it. So
now we know this, but let's head back to those early days of the 2010s. So my understanding is that you basically stepped away a little bit from traffic analysis because it was not a very hot topic.
Yeah, I did my PhD on traffic analysis and mixnets in particular in the early 2000s. And then, the topic died out a little bit. I mean, like the number of publications, I think there was like the early publications are like from the 80s, some in the 90s. Then in the early 2000s, I mean, it was not just me. There were a bunch of people like working on this system. So there was like a kind of a burst of research in that topic. And then the anonymous communication field kind of went very much into the Tor, like it was all attacks on Tor, countermeasures for Tor, a little bit of peer-to-peer as well. But the mixnet thing kind of was sidelined a little bit. But of course, these revelations showed that the threat model that mixnets considered was really relevant in a way when you have entities that are really collecting all this metadata and correlating metadata across different links. So it kind of gave an impulse to this research again. And if it kind of leads to NIM in the sense that also, Europe and the Europeans got a bit freaked out by the fact that American allies were kind of spying on citizens and on such a scale. And this led to concerns of like, well, maybe we should have more security for our own infrastructure so that we don't have these kind of vulnerabilities.
I'm glad that played out exactly like that. And there's so much security now in infrastructure. And I'm not being sarcastic at all. I am very sarcastic. Anyways, so stepping back a little bit, I really want to get your. So I was 3 years old, I think 22 years old, in 2013 when the Snowden revelations dropped. And I remember it did get to me. I was interested in technology in general, consumer tech for the most part. But it did get to me, and I realized that it was a big deal, like something big is happening, but it never. I now see the scale. Of course, it dawned on me over the years. But I think back then I may not necessarily have understood how big of a deal this is. So so it's June 2013. The first, I believe, Glenn Greenwald writes the first article, which reveals the first. Basically the conclusions of the first batch of documents from the Snowden drop. Where were you? And And what did you feel, if you remember how you felt when the
I was in Leuven, I believe, and I mean, it was of course like, hey, have you seen? Have you seen? Like everybody was kind of telling each other, have you seen what is coming out in the Guardian? Oh my god, oh my god. I mean, the feeling was like, okay, so now we know. It was not like, oh my god, I never expected this. It was like, okay, now we have evidence. Now when we are saying this could happen in the motivation of our papers, in the motivation of our talks, we don't get these people rolling their eyes and saying, oh yeah, now you're, here you are, here they are, the privacy people saying, oh, this because it's technically possible to do this, then somebody's doing it. But we have laws and we have oversight and we have checks and balances, so this could never happen because otherwise. And then it was like, okay, so it is happening actually, right? So it was kind of a vindication that that these concerns that we had been kind of talking about for so long were actually real and not some kind of imagination that didn't happen.
So it was vindicating. I think that's a good word. So basically, the just to put it in a different phrase, like this adversary of the GPA, which was mostly a theoretical exercise or this hypothetical scenario, turned out to not only be real but actually like be deployed in like at that point in time actively.
Yeah, it was
actively
up and
working.
running.
Yeah, that must have been pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess there was a lot that came out with the revelations. A lot of documents, a lot of conclusions to be drawn from those documents. Is there anything that hit particularly hard, or that maybe even you and the field were surprised by, or was it all just?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot, right? I mean, I have to say, one kind of good surprise was they had this program for attacking Tor. It was called Egotistical Giraffe, was the code name of the program.
Egotistical or?
Egotistical Giraffe, yeah.
Egotistical Giraffe, nice. I will look into that.
Weird name. So one of the surprising things was that they were actually not able to, I mean, they were able to trace some of the users, but the techniques they were using was mostly like exploiting things in Firefox for the kind of the endpoint for the users connecting. And then they had a partial view, like they were not doing, like, even though they had the information of all this metadata, they were not doing the correlations, or at least in the documents that we saw, this was not very advanced. A reason could be that this was not a very high priority program. They had just 1 or 2 people working on that, and that they hadn't really put the effort to really exploit all the information they had to do the correlations. Now, this was 13 years ago, so we don't know what has happened in the meantime, because we have not had any kind of leaks that are comparable to that. But that was kind of surprising that they were kind of not doing as well as we thought they could have been doing. So that's one of the surprises. Then more surprises on the other side. They were doing more things than people expected them to do. I think the weakening of crypto standards was kind of a surprise, in the sense that the NSA was participating in discussions, in standards discussion and NIST, whatever. And I mean, it's not like everybody trusted them so much, but they were considered to be like kind of honest players that also wanted to contribute to kind of proper standards. And it was shown that in some cases they were trying to undermine these standards to be able to break.
Can you give us a bit of an insight as to what that means? So there's a cryptographic standard, right? What you're describing, my understanding at least, is that they were backdoored, or at least weakened in some way, which is equivalent, or maybe like semi-equivalent to a backdoor. What does that mean from the perspective of the standard and its users at large?
Well, that means that you have like a cryptographic algorithm that has assumptions such as whatever, this numbers. I mean, I'm not a cryptographer, so I speak about it like a bit from as a kind of adjacent researcher rather than a core researcher. But basically, you would say, okay, this is a safe set of parameters for this cryptographic algorithm. It means that finding the key, it takes like millions of years, and you will not be able to do that, right? But then in some cases, if you choose these numbers in certain ways, they can be backdoors, or they can be shortcuts that enable somebody with this knowledge to actually decrypt things easier, right? This is very dangerous as an approach, because you can think, okay, we're the NSA, we are the ones who know this, and nobody else knows that, so we get an advantage because we are able to, maybe decrypt some things while everything else stays. Nobody else can do it. Now, the problem is that when you have these weak spots, you don't know when is the next person who's going to discover that, right? So you're basically, like, if you're the NSA and you're advising American government and American companies to use these standards, you are potentially making them vulnerable to other countries that might discover the kind of the catch, right? So that was kind of surprising, because it's a very risky thing to do, in the sense that you gain an advantage now, but you have the risk of weakening. You get an offensive advantage now, but you get the risk of weakening your defensive. And my understanding is that the NSA also has a mandate to defend, kind of, at least
Of course.
the US, right? It's not just an attack force. So
Yes.
so that was surprising. Then it was surprising to see as well the PRISM was a big one, right? So that was kind of an interface to access the backends of, like, I think it was 9 major providers: Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Google, Yahoo, bunch of others, right? So that meant that they had kind of I don't know if there was any visa warrants involved or not, but they basically had an interface that if they wanted to access information about anyone, they were able to access all the information held in the whatever emails, chats, whatever was held by these companies, right? So that's extremely sensitive, in the sense that, should you trust these big operators that are kind of subject to pressure from these entities? So that was, I think, a blow a little bit to the credibility of these big companies. What else was
Definitely.
there? Yeah, I mean, yeah, the fiber optic was a big one. And then I mean, XKeyscore was kind of the search engine, right? So they were
Yes.
using to pull together from all these programs. If I want to know things about sudo, so I give sudo's IP address or sudo's phone number, sudo's email, and this XKeyscore would be kind of looking for matching this identifier, and then grabbing a web of, like, for example, if your IP address appears next to your email address, now I also have your email address. I can
Yes.
also pull things linked to that.
For
I
me,
mean, honestly, this looks like so quaint right now.
for me personally, this was probably the most terrifying. So it's one thing to have this data, like, collected and organized on, like, certain servers, and maybe have some kind of like a warrant-based access to it in cases where it's like national security, something very important. We could debate that. I'm obviously against it, but we could, have a legitimate debate about a system like that. My understanding, though, is that this search was like your magic search bar on your Mac OS, where you just, people who had access, they had general access, and they could just search for these
Open tab, yeah.
identifiers. And then across these vast databases, grabbed from all kinds of different sources, you could just, like, build a profile on the spot on one of these individual identifiers, which is probably, for me at least, the most terrifying. And this was, again, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, this was 13 years ago. So 13 years ago, we had the what was it? The iPhone 6, maybe. Just imagine how far technology has come in these 13 years. So we have a snapshot back then, but we have absolutely no idea where this stuff could be today, and how it could, like, what capabilities it can have today. So it's kind of scary.
In particular, the search and retrieval, because it is one thing to collect all this data, but now you have a huge haystack, right?
Yeah.
Massive haystack, and now you want to find pieces of value, because for whatever, intelligence on other countries, or other companies from other countries, or whatever you want to find, and you have this huge haystack. So how do you extract value, right, from this huge data collection? You need to have something that is going to filter what you want for the purpose that you want it when you want it. Now, this XKeyscore was like keyword message and stuff like that. Like, I do not want to imagine what they have now with AI integrated in being able to kind of correlate and search through all these data stores. I can imagine this has been superseded by much more modern ways of pulling the information from all these and correlating information in different programs.
I mean, look, even if I just, with my sort of novice brain, I just imagine a scenario where I have what we described, so this search engine, and I just have like LLM-based summarization of that information. That's already like several levels of power more, you know, than without it. So definitely we did come a long way since then. And since you mentioned haystacks, I have to bring in the infamous quote of "You need a haystack to find a needle." Do you remember who said this?
No, who did?
It was the head of the NSA at the time called wait a second, what was his name? I'm looking this up. The name, I can't remember what the name of the person was. If you guys can look it up, then drop it in chat. But this was the head of the NSA at the time, and this was basically his argument for collecting the haystack of data so that you can then find the needle.
I mean, if you want to know, I mean, this is a bit traced back to Iraq, you know, and well, to 9/11 actually.
Yep.
In the sense that, we had all the pieces of information, but we didn't connect the dots because, you know, we're not working together across agencies or whatever. So we need total information awareness, right? So this was what came out of 9/11, and then 12 years later, you know, this is the kind of system that it had engendered, you know, from this idea of pulling together all the resources in order to find threats. So yeah.
All right. So hopefully we sort of drew a picture for those who don't have like a complete understanding of what the Snowden revelations were and why they were such a big deal, and they still are a big deal. Maybe by now you have a bit of a better idea. But this also had very big impact on the world in a different way, if I may say so, which is that it did, like, a lot of different like a lot of the founders of NIM and also just people who have been around NIM from the early days told me that the Snowden revelations, if they have to name one thing, then basically this was the trigger for NIM to become a thing eventually. Can you say a bit more about that? Like, can you draw the line from Snowden revelations to the founding of NIM?
So we tried to get funding for mixednet research in like a few years before. And it was very hard. Like we tried with European Commission projects. It was a hard thing to fund, right? Like it was not landing. Even though the research was good, the proposals were good, but the kind of impact was not considered good enough. And these revelations, I think, made clear that this was a real problem that needed real solutions. So thanks to that, we did another attempt, I think in probably 2014, so a year later, of putting a proposal, the Panoramics proposal, to revive research on mixednets and try to come up with some new designs. And
Lupix was first, and then Panoramics, right?
No, Lupix was developed as part of Panoramics.
Okay.
So Panoramics actually funded 3-4 years of research. I believe Ania actually did her PhD funded by Panoramics. So another of our co-founders. Basically the reason I think the Snowden revelations really helped the European Commission understand that this was a kind of research that was worth funding and that had a high impact. So in that sense, I mean, and then from Panoramics, NIM is kind of a descendant of this project, in the sense that several of the people in the founding group and the research that we were building on was coming out of Panoramics. So yeah, Panoramics is foundational for the NIM network that comes after. Yeah.
So of the current NIM team, so the founders are yourself, Harry, and Ania.
Yeah.
And then there are the early people at NIM, such as Jaya and others, Alexi, all of these people. How did you guys know each other already, or like what was the?
Yeah, I knew Harry from like 2012, I think. I mean, from events and just in the same environment. And then when we were doing, and of course I knew George Danes is the supervisor of Ania already. We were doing the PhD at the same time. So when so when we put together this project, also with Agelos, who's now is an advisor for NIM, is also the chief scientist of IOH, Cardano. So we basically said, Agelos was actually the one coming to us and saying, hey, you know, we're thinking of making a European project on mixed nets. So he kind of launched the initiative, and, you know, the just group came together. And then, well, Ania, as I said, did her PhD on this topic because of this funding. Otherwise, he probably would have done a PhD on something else and wouldn't be doing work for NIM now, and NIM wouldn't exist. So yeah, in that sense, there is kind of a direct line from these revelations to where we are today at NIM.
So it's mostly the funding that was missing. So the market interest, or like the academic interest, the serious interest in like countering the GPA.
I mean, once you have funding, what does it mean to have funding? To have funding means that you hire a PhD student, and the PhD student is working on that topic, and that means they are writing papers on that topic and advancing that topic, right? If you don't have funding for paying people to work on that topic, is probably not going to be a lot of work being done, right? So unless you have like basic funding with no strings attached and you decide to work on this topic. So funding is very important in the sense that, I mean, there's all these open problems to work on. Which ones you work on are the ones that you get funding to be able, like from some, whatever, agency, public, private, whatever it is, right? Somebody thinks that this is worthwhile research, and that means, you know, training some PhD students, and that is what makes the thing advance, because these PhD students are thinking hard and coming up with new solutions and stuff like that.
All right, so both, you know, in the case of NIM specifically, right, we were made possible by the Snowden revelations, and now you just told me that the general interest in funding, you know, countering that GPA went up, all the way up in 2013 because of the very real threat of an existing GPA. So please, I guess that means that by now we won this fight, right? And basically everything is metadata leaking proof today in 2016, because 13 years have passed, and I'm sure that's plenty of time to achieve this, right?
There's plenty of time for the adversary as well, to, you know.
Exactly. So where do we stand today?
I mean, yeah, unfortunately, it's a hard problem, you know. Content protection is a hard problem too, but it's an easier problem. And I think huge advances have been done in practice for protecting content. When it comes to metadata, it's a very hard problem, because metadata in this case is when you're doing things, right? So if you want to conceal when you're making a phone call, and somebody can observe your line when it lights up or not,
that's very hard.
Making phone calls all the time, right?
Yeah.
Either you have like an agent on your behalf pretending to do that, or you personally have to just call random numbers from your phone and say, sorry, yeah, this is a joke. You see what I mean? It's very hard compared to protecting content, that you can have these nice mathematical algorithms that with some operations are able to transform a text into something that is very difficult to reverse. When you're talking about metadata, you're talking about source, destination, timing, volume, right? Making that invisible is much harder, is much more effort, and is much more leaky, in the sense that how do you not leak when you're active and when you're not? Even if you have dummy traffic, sometimes you will switch off your computer and then it will be sure that you're not connected. You see what I mean? So yeah. It's a very, very hard problem. Yeah. We can improve what our solutions, but it's a very high objective to get to.
Yeah. But at least the minds we won, right? So everybody is well aware of the Snowden revelations.
Yeah, I can tell you one
it's a
more
common
thing,
topic.
Actually. I was teaching at the time. And I did see, that was actually surprising. Like I did see a huge impact on students, right? So it was like my second or third year teaching. And then the students that came, so this was June, so the students that came in September, I mean, of course, I put some in the course, there was some information about the programs, okay, what we know, what is going on, because it's like always like, oh, you have this system, this threat, this is the problem, and then you can say, well, and actually this is what we know about what's going on, right? And the students that came for the next couple of years, but definitely like the first 2-3 years, they were much more motivated. They were choosing the course because they had heard about this and they were concerned about it. They were like, I really saw like a kind of cultural impact on the students that was very remarkable. I was not aware that they were following. So I mean, these were quite young people, right? So it was surprising to see the extent to which they took it very seriously.
Do you think that stuck? So if you look around these days, maybe in the same circles, like PhD students in the field these days, do you think that's still around? That kind of like additional extra drive? Is there an uptick in the number of people who?
Ooh. Did we lose Sudo?
Oops, sorry, I'm back.
We lost you for a second.
When did you lose me?
Oh, just a couple of seconds.
Yeah. So is there a do you think that stuck around? Is it still with people? This urgency?
I mean, of course it fades, right? Like now it's 13 years is kind of a long time. I mean, I'm not teaching anymore, but I mean, the people who are now coming to what would be this course would be 10 years old when this happened, right? So it's something that they read kind of in the history books in a way, right? It definitely caused a bump in the number of students taking privacy lectures and their engagement. They were super motivated, super interested in the topic. And I think that lasted a few years, easily, 3 years at least. And then slowly, start getting old, right? And then, these days, I don't know if people probably have heard of it, but it's not as recent and as fresh and as kind of shocking as it was in the years immediately after.
So as for the scorecard for the whole, Snowden took a huge risk and actually he ended up stuck in Moscow. A lot of people will tell you that is because he's a Russian spy. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a verified lie. He was actually, we know him to be stuck there because he was made to be stuck there. He should have moved on, I believe, to Paraguay. But that was
something like that, yeah.
Something like that, yes. But that was prevented specifically so that the propaganda can be spun about him that he's sort of like a Russian asset. So he took a massive risk with this, right? So let's look at the scorecard. I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but content encryption definitely became more of a thing as a result of the Snowden leaks. Is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah. I think there was a big push, yeah.
So these days we have, most of our messaging applications are end-to-end encrypted. Don't use the ones that aren't. It's important. Actually, end-to-end encryption is
not only like chat and WhatsApp and stuff, but even like websites, right? Like it was a lot of the websites were not with HTTPS, right?
Yeah.
So now we just take it for granted, but it wasn't always like that.
Yes. And then so that won us the war of encryption. Maybe that's a good thing. But then metadata-wise, maybe because of the difficulty that you described of solving this problem, it's not trivial at all. Other than NIM and also a few other now not theoretical but actually working examples of mixed nets that exist, a very few, I have to say. So NIM is the very few that are actually functional today. One of the very few. Did anything else happen? Did we win this or did we lose after 13 years? What would you say?
I mean, it depends, right? Like other things were, I mean, my understanding is that the European Union put, for example, a lot of data from Europe has to stay in Europe. So there was kind of this kind of promiscuity of just using all these services and thinking that everything is safe. It was a bit shattered. So I think but that's not really technical. That's more like kind of organizational and legal.
Yeah.
That there is a like the kind of distrust that was created by these revelations, I think, did have an impact on rules, on what you can do with data, and data protection and stuff.
So then my next question is putting all of this into the context of the crypto wars, the famous, let's call it the activism of the cypherpunks. I think that's a fair summary of it, which did win. And we have the aforementioned TLS, and HTTPS, those little locks that we have everywhere would not be there at all if it wasn't for their activism, because it would be illegal to use such technologies, right? So that's a big deal. And then maybe we can consider this the crypto wars too, like the Second World War, but second crypto wars that we had basically with, actually it's a bit different, but that we had, with the Snowden revelations coming out. Once again, we had a bit of a win, and, end-to-end encryption became more widespread, not just for messaging, but also for websites. Is there Crypto Wars 3 happening right now with client-side scanning getting pushed in Europe? And it's just one of the examples of many such similar initiatives. Do you think it's fair to say that we're in yet another hot war of crypto? And are we winning this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's different wars or just the same kind of evolving, over time. Client device security is a huge one now, right? Because, we have these really powerful devices. We are carrying them all the time, all kinds of whatever, from wearables to phones that are part of us almost, right? The amount of data we're generating is more than ever, right? And a lot of security, I have to say, including with mixnets, requires endpoint security, right? Like if your phone is compromised, if your computer is compromised, then it doesn't really matter how secure is your pipeline, because I can see things at the source, right? And then we have had like this Pegasus, for example, and other things that have been uncovered that are, kind of targeting devices. There is all kinds of vulnerability. We have so many layers of software, apps, operating system, everything, right? Like one vulnerability can let someone kind of slip in and start, learning things about the information in your device that they shouldn't be having access to. So to me, and the device security is another really hard one, also because you have all these, they have all these doors and windows, and you have to make sure that they are all safe, and it's really hard to ensure that. Now with AI, we have a new race in the sense that AI can find vulnerabilities that were, more difficult to find before. I hope it can also help solve vulnerabilities in a faster way. But it's going to be, again, I think, a kind of fast-moving kind of environment. That's one. The other one is that also we have only increased in our usage of commercial digital services. There is more and more services that we're using, right? So that means more data about us is being produced and generated, and this government, this NSA, they are not only, my understanding is that they are not only now relying on their own data collection, but they're also buying databases. There's all these data brokers that have tons of data, and now these agencies can also just buy the data and add it to whatever else they are collecting.
Exactly. I don't know about the NSA. I treat this as a fact, basically, that the NSA is also engaging in this practice. But we know for a fact about the FBI that they are like routinely purchasing vast amounts of data from data brokers, which is a pretty scary prospect. As for the client device security, it is bad. My government, my former government, thank God, who are now ousted. So I'm Hungarian originally, and of course we just ousted Orban a few months back, which I'm very happy with, and I take as a big win. They did deploy Pegasus against both opposition politicians and also journalists.
Yeah.
So that's a huge
It's
concern.
not the
And
only ones, Hungary. I mean, several countries have done this. Huh?
yes. But to be honest with you, I am still more okay with Pegasus existing, and it's very hard to, like you just said, there's so many layers of software which can all have vulnerabilities in different, in all kinds of different places. It's just, I'm more okay with that than constant surveillance of everybody all the time, everywhere, and then yeah. So, but it's. I mean, again, obviously, both are horrible.
It's a
But
scaling problem. Look, it's
yes,
this is the old discussion of targeted is okay, mass is not okay. I mean, there are people doing bad things to other people in the world, and you want the possibility to have investigations and to have justice, and it's not like we want a world where everybody can do whatever they want and nobody else can, nobody's accountable. So this is also part of reality, right? The thing is that ideally, in an ideal world, police work is hard, right? And they need to make an effort, and they have limited resources, and they need
and
to
it should be
investigate.
hard.
Yeah. This is in an ideal world, right? They have limited resources, and they should allocate the resources to go after the bad people that really merit the usage of these resources, right? And then the problem is that if the job is that's too cheap, if it's too cheap to surveil people and to go after people, then you might not just go after the people who are, committing crimes, but just people who are uncomfortable, or just simply everybody, just in case, right? Or because there's many things you can do with this data, from crowd control to whatever, election campaigns, all kinds of things. There's many usages. So there is this targeted versus mass. Now, the problem is the scaling. And what do we say? Because, targeted in some cases, as my understanding, I mean, I'm speaking from memory now, but my understanding is that some of the targeted stuff that these NSA programs were claiming it was targeting like huge amounts of people. So one person and all their degree 2 associates, right? Which could be thousands of people that are unrelated. So is that targeted or not, right? And with Pegasus is the same. Like if you say, okay, if you can only use Pegasus against 10 people in the country or 100 people in the country, then you're going to be picking your targets very carefully to make use of this kind of capability that you have in the best possible way. But is this really so limited? What happens when you have AI being able to make sense of results from Pegasus, and you don't need to hire thousands and thousands and thousands of people? That is very expensive, and anybody can be a whistleblower, and you have all these problems. But what if you can really scale it and be not only like extremely intrusive, but also do it at scale, and it doesn't add to your cost? So this is the danger, right? And it's very dangerous to have this mentality of you need a big haystack to find the needle.
Yeah, definitely. I was bringing that up facetiously, and it's such a good like condensed representation of this mindset, right? Yeah. You need that really encapsulates the whole thing. Like we need to collect all of this data so that all the bad people you're safe. Unless you're a bad person, because then you have things to worry about. So this is like a terrible.
Well, this is something that I think got disproven, right? Like, if you have nothing to hide, nothing to fear, right? No, I mean, you have nothing to hide. Like your data is being collected and analyzed, and decisions are being made on it. So it's not like you need to be like some dangerous person to be a target in that sense, right?
Exactly.
But I fully disagree with that. I think that's lazy, and I think that I would like to see law enforcement and intelligence being much more surgical and like infiltrating whatever communities are dangerous, whatever, human trafficking networks.
Yeah, exactly.
Fraud networks. Just, go after those people and focus on those people and leave everybody else alone.
Do the hard work. It's all possible. Yeah. Detective work has been like, it has
not
such
like,
a long lineage.
I want to just sit on my desk and push a button, and I don't have to, infiltrate any networks or anything, and just, filter signals and, get the result.
Yes, exactly. Do the hard work. It's hard work, like you said, and it's probably increasingly harder. I would be okay, like if I was the decision maker, I would be okay giving them tools in a targeted way that can do targeted hard work, to basically participate in the cat and mouse game of things becoming easier also on the criminal side, basically. But just mass surveillance is where, for me, it's like there's this like objective line, because deploying something like Pegasus, for example, is it costs money. I believe even just the instance costs money, like just to deploy it on a like a client device, right? And it's also kind of complicated. It assumes
How do you
something.
expose the program potentially? Because
Yeah.
one phone that can be examined or whatever might give away like what's going on, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's
Problem is
by
that they are
nature
maybe
it's
not
targeted.
using it to go after the organized crime, but to go after the political
Yeah.
adversaries and the and the journalists
And the
the
journalists. Yeah.
uncomfortable people instead of the actual criminals. So.
Hopefully I can tease out, because we're going to have to jump into the community questions in a bit. Hopefully I can tease out a positive note to end on. So first of all, for a normal person this year in 2026 who doesn't think, they are a target of, I don't think that I would be someone who the government would spend all the money of installing a Pegasus on my phone, right? Why should I still care about metadata and metadata surveillance as a normal person? And sorry, I don't know if you can hear the background noise. There's a, you know what? Answer this question. Hopefully the drilling ends by the time.
You muted?
I just muted myself
okay.
because there's
You're
some
giving
drilling.
me so why should I mean, there's different reasons why a normal person might want to be worried, right? So one of them is not just like the use of this information for kind of law enforcement operations, but for manipulation in general, right? And this can be manipulation already from in commercial sense, like to push you to buy things that maybe you don't need. But I kind of, if I learn enough about you, and I know, this is kind of the whole surveillance capitalism argument, right? That if I know so much about you and I know what patterns of behavior you have, I can just nudge you and manipulate you to take the actions that are good for me, which is spending money with my products or whatever, right? So this is one. Another one is that unfortunately, we live in a moment in which democratic guarantees are a little bit in question, right? So we are seeing that civil rights and liberties that we were taking for granted are maybe not so much given for granted, and that there is things that are not necessarily illegal behavior that can get you harassed or in trouble. I mean, I think we saw that, I don't know, with ICE raids in the US that in some cases even targeted US citizens, right? Or, with access to abortion, for example, some people can find themselves in situations where, they are, the local laws are kind of not allowing them what they want to do. So, I mean, you never know when you're going to have a situation where this information can suddenly, you're not a target until you are. You see what I mean? So that's one. The other one is not only about law enforcement and being put in a concentration camp or something, but it's also about just not having autonomy to make your own decisions and to have others kind of push you to basically for their own agenda rather than you having a kind of unfiltered action in the world that is not like somebody knowing everything about you and taking the specific steps that are going to push your buttons for you to do what they want. So I think it's a question of autonomy as well. It's a question of like, do you are you comfortable with others kind of using you in a way for purposes that are not necessarily in your best interest?
It was not that positive note that I was looking for. We
I'm
spoke about this,
sorry.
by the way. No. For context, ladies and gentlemen, we in the backstage before this call, we spoke about this with Claudia. It's hard to come up with positive stuff actually in this top or like on this topic as a note to end on, because there's actually kind of a bleak picture that is shaping up when you look into the future. But I believe that there are at least a few things that were positive outcomes, not just of the Snowden revelations, but also of this recent like a decay of democracy that you and civil liberties that you described. What are the top 3 that you can name? And then actually we are ending on a positive note before we jump into the community questions.
Top 3 what? Sorry.
Top
Bad
3.
things or good things?
let's try to focus on the good ones.
The good ones. I mean, I think there is awareness, right? Like when I started working on this field, I actually started research in 2000. And I started in November 2000, and then less than a year into my PhD, 9/11 happens, right? And I remember being on random conversations with people in airplanes. So what are you working on? I work on, anonymity, privacy technologies. Oh, but that's for terrorists, right? That's for criminals. And there was really not an understanding by normal citizens that this is something they should care about, they should worry about. And so this, I think the awareness has definitely is huge. I mean, we were having to, now it's like preaching to the converts, like in year 2002, 2003 was really hard to even motivate these kind of technologies, because everybody was like, oh, but you're just helping, the terrorists. It was, the early 2000s was a hard time to do privacy, actually. So these revelations definitely made it clear to everyone that this was all our problem. This was something that is serious. This is something that is real. It's something we should care about. So that's one. I think another good one is to kind of diversify a little bit, that we don't have like this massive central companies located all in one country, controlling all our digital lives. So decentralization, the push for decentralization, the push for reshoring data processing and data holding, so that countries are less vulnerable to essentially to US industry and government basically having full visibility over their populations, to health data, all of these things, right? So I think that's also a positive, that this awareness is not only in the general population, but also in the leadership of many other countries, that they realize that they need to have, that having a safe country means also having a safe population. And it means that you shouldn't have other countries, governments or companies having this kind of insight into your population, because this is a critical vulnerability. So that's maybe a second one. And if I have to think of a third one, I would say, the push for encryption everywhere, and the kind of upping the game in security. Security was not popular in the early 2000s. It was not as well funded a field. It was not something that people thought was so important. It was kind of annoying. It just makes everything slower. It makes everything more complicated. It's just like these annoying people that are paranoid and whatever, right? And I think now, like, everybody takes security seriously. And we have a lot more solutions at all the levels. I mean, we have all the encrypted apps have end-to-end encryption. This was not the case like in the past, right? So there is definitely some good outcomes of this. And I mean, anyway, transparency is a good thing. The bad thing is not the revelations. The bad thing is that it was happening in the first place, right? The fact that it was revealed just made us understand what was going on.
Yes. To be clear, though, security is still kind of annoying. Okay, so when I have to, I understand the reason for it, but when I have to grab my phone to go into the authenticator app and find
authentication, password managers,
exactly,
all of this,
but
updates all the time. Yeah, it's annoying. I know.
Exactly, but it is for good reason, and definitely we had a bit of
we have more tolerance, I think, because we understand that if we don't have this, then worse things can happen.
Yes, exactly. A big thanks for that, Claudia. It was thoroughly enjoyable. Hopefully, people got a bit of a different, or like our audience got a bit of a different perspective on the whole Snowden revelations and what it meant from an academic's perspective, who was involved in the revelations, or like went through the revelations from that perspective. Now it's time to jump into the community questions. You can still leave your questions in the chat, by the way. We're going to pick them up. First question is from Rocio, and it reads, when a Latin American government buys black box intelligence software from Silicon Valley, are we importing security or are we exporting our digital sovereignty? Very good question. What do you think about this, Claudia?
Very good question. That's a very good question. I mean, I would be, if I was a country, I would want to have my homegrown stuff rather than buy it from other parties. But I mean, you have to be very tight with these other parties to really trust them to, to provide you with this kind of solution. I think it would be naive to think that you're just buying security and not giving anything up other than whatever money you're paying for it. So yeah, digital sovereignty, I think, is a really important thing, particularly in an increasingly hostile world where, even countries that were allies, have been allies for a long time, is not clear what this means anymore.
Thank you for that answer, and thanks for the question, Rocio. Next one is also from Rocio. How can everyday citizens defend themselves against digital colonialism when our own data protection laws are filled with national security loopholes?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer for this. Another very good questions. I mean, there is things we can do to kind of limit the damage a little bit, right? I mean, a lot of these products that are pushed on us are commercial products that we can, in some cases, choose not to use, although I understand that this comes with huge downsides in terms of being able to access services and stuff like maps, online maps, to be able to find stuff, right? But yeah, I wish I had a better answer. Protecting against digital colonialism. I mean, if you want to use the digital space and you want to be connected and you want to have devices and you want to have apps, as an individual, you don't have a lot of leverage in deciding how these apps are architected, and not only leverage, but sometimes not even a lot of transparency on how these backends are constructed and what is happening to the data pipeline in the background, right? At the same time, I'm not going to tell people to just throw their phone and leave, like in the 90s. Not sure that's also very feasible. So
yes,
yeah,
there's no good answer to this, unfortunately. But I think on the long term, especially, the free and open source software movement in general is a bit of an answer to this. It's also a global initiative, but sort of on the flip side, on the other or on the other side of the coin, from all the proprietary stuff that these big massive Goliath corporations are pushing out. I think that could be a counterbalance on the long term. So use free and open source stuff as much as you can. Support those projects. If you're a dev, then contribute to them, because I think that can also sort of contribute to more control on the technology that we're using. You can't really fork Google Maps. It's very hard to do so, but you can fork a free and open source tool and maybe bring it closer to the requirements of your local needs, right? That are set by your local needs. You can also see what the code is actually doing. There are no secret data collection pipelines and all of that stuff. So that could be a long-term solution. Thank you for the question. Oh, sorry.
If I may, because I don't think we answered fully the question, because if I see the last part of the question is when our own data protection laws are filled with national security loopholes. So we do have data protection laws, but data protection doesn't apply to intelligence services, for example, or police work, right? Honestly, I think the only way to fight against this is not so much with technology, but with politics. So if we want this to change, we need to make it so that the people making the rules are giving more weight to privacy and not favoring these national security loopholes that weaken privacy. But this is ultimately a political decision. So we need to have leaders that are going to go that direction.
Yes, that is very true. Thank you for the great question, Rocio. Very thoughtful, and also for the answer. Last one from Rocio. Claudia, what motivated you to research and become so academically involved in the field of privacy?
It was a bit by chance.
By chance?
I became a believer as I was working on the topic. I didn't start a believer. So I was looking for. I finished my degree. I had been in here in Leuven for my master thesis, and it seemed like a good place. Security was exciting. So yeah, when I went to ask for a PhD position, they said, we have this new project on anonymity and privacy. Are you interested? I was like, yeah, sure, bring it on. And then as I started working on the topic, I realized how really fascinating it was. So for me, it was as I joined the field, and then I became very involved and very motivated, rather than being motivated beforehand and then choosing this because of some reason. So.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the great questions, Rocio. And thanks for that answer. So, yeah, Bikram is asking, do you use AI tools like Claude or other advanced models in your research? And what do you think about the role of these models at their current stage in research?
I do use Claude. I've started using it. I mean, a few months, the last few months, I haven't been using it for like 2-3 years like other people. So for me, it's a bit newer. It is very useful, but you have to be very careful as well, in the sense that it's like having for example, I've been like doing some analysis of some systems, right? So having Claude allows me to say, go look in the source code and check how exactly this algorithm works, right? So that is something that if I had to do it, it would be extremely time consuming to find the source code, to find the place where this is happening, to make sense of it, right? So in some ways, it gives me capabilities that are extremely useful, right? At the same time, it often happens that I get some responses, I get some information, I start working on it, I keep iterating and asking questions, and then it turns out that some of the things I was told were false, right?
Yeah.
And then this has happened to me this week, right? So I had to do like multiple iterations in order to finally ascertain what was really the way it was working, so that my analysis would actually be accurate, right? So it's very useful, but you really have to know what you're doing. And you have to be extremely questioning of everything you get back, because otherwise, you can very easily as well go into the wrong path. So it's a great new tool, but it's a tool to be used with caution. That would be my take.
Yes, my take as well is exactly. I didn't really use AI as much as maybe other people, because I take pride in writing my own things, and the biggest thing that I would use it for is actually writing stuff, creating copy, and I like to do that myself. But these days, I actually realized that it's nice as a basically like a diligent little like helper, not as someone. Don't never let AI think for you, because that's, first of all, then you're becoming dumber, which you should not. Like, you should always think, right? And you should not outsource your thinking. And also, it will necessarily lead you down on these rabbit holes of hallucinations, and then they can produce those so convincingly that you will believe it, and then it will take a lot of time. Like, it's a bit of a disaster. So always use it as a little helper, whatever you're using it for. And I will also say, maybe we can share a link to Hux's GitHub repo. Use memory crystals and processes. Those are very useful. Look into how those work if you haven't already, because with that you can actually set up your own processes, create even personas and agents that discuss certain topics amongst themselves from different perspectives, and then reveal to you already like a more like sort of
and build expertise, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
I mean, the first thing you get if you get some raw model is usually quite wrong. But if you are like, I'm training my own instance to know a lot about NIM, to know a lot about all this research in my field, so it's getting better and better. But I have to say, like, you really have to know what you're doing. Like, I catch so many wrong things. I'm not worried about being substituted by AI yet.
Maybe next year we'll get back to this question when I bring you on next time.
But it has a long way to improve. Like, it's really good for some things, but you still need to have your own intelligence to
Yes,
drive
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Bikram. Next one is also from Bikram. So, question: where do you see NIM technology in the next 5 years, both in crypto and the broader privacy space? I'm not asking about token price. I just wanted to know about your vision as a scientist.
I mean, what I would like to see in the next 5 years is to especially to kind of scale and to reach many more people. I mean, the mission of NIM is to enable privacy for all of humanity, right? So what I would like to see is, oh my God, sorry, dog is complaining.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Time
What
for
I
a
would like
walk.
to see is how do we go from having a user base that is kind of people that are highly aware and highly interested in privacy to really reaching everybody. And for that, you need to be very usable, and you need to be, you need to be appealing and to have this reach. And I think there is also like a safety in numbers for this kind of technology, in the sense that you can have an extremely secure system if only 10 people are using it. You're not getting very meaningful protection, because if somebody
It's a
wants to go,
floodlight.
yeah,
It's actually worse
yeah,
that you're using
because
it
then
than.
I just go and after those 10 people, and that's it, right? Like, so you need to have a large mass, and that's what really provides protection for everybody. So the more people join the system, the more safe everybody is.
Privacy loves
To me,
company, ladies and
that
gentlemen.
would be the future, right?
Yes, privacy loves company, as we like
Yeah.
to say. That's our motto for a reason. All right, last question. I think it's a good one, and then we can. Sorry, we went over time a bit. I hope you don't mind. We can wrap up in just a second, but let me ask this one because it's also a good one. Zero X Just is asking, what do you think about the British digital passportization and this
Oh
passport
my God, I
and
haven't been
this
looking into
passportization
that.
at all?
I haven't been looking into it. I mean, I know just the headlines, so I cannot speak with much authority about this. Sorry.
Not maybe not the specific implementation or this specific stream, but just the realm of digital ID. Maybe we can talk to
Yeah.
that. We
Yeah. I mean, so I might have a little bit of. I mean, I know that this digital IDs are, and IDs in general in the Anglo-Saxon world are kind of a very big deal. In mainland Europe, have had IDs for many decades. So I think it's much more of an accepted part of life. I mean, where I'm from in Spain, we had IDs, I don't know, from a long time ago, and then in Belgium as well. So I have the impression that this is a much more controversial subject on countries that haven't had this ID for a long time, and now they want to introduce it. And of course, everything has been working without this for a long time. So there is this concern of how things are going to change, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, because I have always lived with ID. I don't have a strong reaction as much as people who are from countries where IDs are not kind of part of life forever.
for me, it's always a matter of implementation. Ironically, I think OpenAI, with a bunch of researchers in the AI field, they wrote that paper about AI safety, which actually included the only somewhat sensible implementation of, or suggested implementation of a digital ID for internet use. This is what it will always come down to, right? So if we have digital ID, ultimately governments will want you to sign in using that ID when you're using the internet, because it's just now this is tucked under child safety, right?
Yeah.
That's the main argument. But actually, from a national security perspective,
Yeah.
so from the perspective of law enforcement and secret services, it is just very, very good to have that sort of control, or like that sort of understanding of who's doing what on the internet.
And obviously, there's a big difference. I mean, just to qualify what I just said, right? There's a big difference between having an ID that you use when you go to the city hall to identify yourself, or when you are paying your taxes to identify yourself, or when you're getting a driver's license, or when you're
Yes.
voting, right? These are kind of use cases that are, I think, very accepted widely in countries that have had ID forever. It's a different thing that you have to have an ID to do a Google search or to
Yes.
log into your email or to use services that, are not requiring this level of identification.
Yes, this is where I was going. Sorry, a very long tangent, but this is where I was going. Basically, that up to the point where you don't need to use it on the internet, it basically doesn't matter. The digital ID implementation or whatever is just like your ID card.
If I
but
would
not
have
in
to
a
use it to connect to my bank, I would be
yes,
okay, right?
yes,
But if I have to use it to connect to email or search or other
yes.
services, then why, right? Why
Which
this kind of
is
information?
the direction in which we seem to be going basically everywhere, and that's a big concern. I'm personally deeply against this, but I don't feel like we can stop this trend at this point. Also, especially with all the geopolitical instability that is sort of taking over the world right now. I don't need to give you examples.
I am not sure they're going to pull it off. This
You don't think so?
forcing
I hope
people
you're
to
right.
use IDs online.
I hope you're right.
I think in practice it's actually really hard to make it happen. So I don't know.
Look, I hope you're right. There's already the like you can't use social media applications in Australia if you're not 16 or older.
Yeah.
How is that being pulled off? That there is like I think through third parties, Australia, like the service providers in Australia have to ask for some kind of government ID so that you can prove that you're above that age, something like that. And this could be this. I see this becoming more and more common. That's something I'm deeply against. I don't know how this could be stopped, but if we are doing such solutions, then it just has to be zero knowledge. So there has to be similarly to ZK NIMS, where a credential is issued, but and you see as the
that's the good solution, right?
Yes,
that's a good solution.
I have big doubts whether that's going to be the case everywhere. But if that's what ends up getting implemented, something similar to ZK NIMS, where like throwaway one-time credentials are issued.
You're older or younger than an age, but you don't provide who you are. You just
who you are, where you live, nothing else. Yes, only that. Look, I will indeed let you go in just a second because I can hear that you have some urgent tasks to attend to. So just in closing, Claudia, a big thanks again for coming on and sharing your perspective on the Snowden revelations and what they meant for the world since then, all the way up to today, and also what they meant in the founding of NIM and how they led to it. First of all, I'll open up the floor for you for some closing remarks, and then I can just wrap up here.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I have a very impatient puppy here. So, thanks for it was, nostalgia. I mean, you took me down nostalgia road of what 13 years ago, all the things that happened. And I mean, the fight goes on, it's good to have this points where we are understanding what the threats look like, what is happening, but we basically have to just keep working to make our systems more secure against all kinds of adversaries.
Yes. Now, on that note, the last thing I have to do is to share with our dear community the POAP that they get for hanging out with us today on this special day. So for those of you who are listening to us for the first time, we are commemorating these little hangouts together with a little NFT that people can claim by entering a secret phrase. So I'm going to share that with you, but there's a twist today. So, oops, sorry. Sal, help me out here. Which one is the slide? Oh, there it is. Okay, so you need to go to the usual place, nim.com/go/poap, and you need to enter the password citizen4 with a capital C. Now, the reason why we chose this is because citizen4 is the pseudonym that Edward Snowden chose to contact journalists, including Glenn Greenwald, to basically make sure that his leaks can come out. And also, there is a great movie about. I'm going to send the link to its IMDb page here. Make sure to check it out if you haven't seen it. It's a documentary about Snowden and about what he reported on and how it all went down. So make sure to check it out. And this week for us is about spreading NIM VPN. As mentioned, the Snowden revelations had a lot to do with NIM becoming a thing through, basically inspiring interest in the field more so than before, and allowing funding to flow towards projects and also academic initiatives like the ones that preceded NIM. So this is a big deal for us. A lot of the members of the NIM team are deeply motivated by the Snowden revelations. So for this reason, we want to share a lot of free passes this week. So if you tweet at us, maybe responding to the announcement of this call on Twitter, and share your thoughts about this call or the Snowden revelations or Snowden himself, or maybe Claudia, then you can get 5 free passes, which you can give your friends, and then they can also try out this technology, which is a direct result of the Snowden revelations. You can also, no promises there, but you can also reach out to us on Telegram this week, and if you ask nicely enough, then we can send you a batch of free passes. And you can give those to your friends, and they can also try out NIM VPN and the NIM network, which is in large part, due to the work and the risk that that Snowden has taken. With all of that said, let me show our faces again and the little puppy that Claudia has. Show us the puppy before we go. Very cute, very cute. Big thanks for joining me again, Claudia. Big thanks to all of you for listening, and see you.